World IBD Day takes place every year on the 19th of May to unite people worldwide in the fight against Crohn's and colitis, also known as inflammatory bowel disease or IBD. There are 10 million people worldwide who have been diagnosed and are living with inflammatory bowel conditions. This year, Hollister, Dansac and Crohn's and Colitis UK unite to bring together Sue Lennon, nurse, therapist, educator and coach, in conversation with Dynamo to raise awareness for these digestive conditions.
Hi, I'm Sue Lennon and I'm here with Dynamo today to talk about his life with IBD and how he makes IBD work. We're recording this through Crohn's and Colitis UK. So, hi Dynamo, I'd really love it if you could just briefly introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, my name's Stephen Frayne, but most of you will know me as Dynamo, and I'm a magician from Bradford.
So I'm really interested in this because I used to work at the hospital in Bradford and we've just discovered that we have this connection this morning. How old were you when you started with your IBD symptoms, Dynamo, and what led up to your diagnosis?
I was diagnosed when I was 15 years old, but I started having tests and things to figure out what was going on in my body when I was about 13 years old. So for the couple of years before I was actually diagnosed, the reason I ended up going to get tested in the first place was because I was a lot smaller than the other kids at school and everyone was going through adolescence. I was a bit of a slow starter, let's just say, and my mum was concerned that I wasn't kind of growing at the rate that she expected me to compared to my friends. So she took me to the doctors to say, is there anything wrong with my little boy?
Okay, and were you displaying kind of bowel symptoms at that time or you just weren't thriving?
I guess I just weren't thriving, and you know, in some respects I probably didn't necessarily know what was normal or not normal in regards to bowel symptoms. So, you know, being a kid, I wasn't sure, but obviously my mum was concerned, so it made me a bit concerned about it too.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I'm really empathic about this whole idea that you're a young lad, you're not thriving, you're not the same as your mates, and there's a lot of uncertainty, and you know, and then you go off to the hospital and you have very invasive investigations for a young lad to cope with. How did that affect you?
In some ways, the young naivety in me kind of felt like I was going on little adventures, because a lot of times when I was having to go to the hospital to have these tests done, I was getting to have the day off school, and then the test would be in the morning, and then my mum would let me have the afternoon off. So it was like, for me, I was like excited because I'd get to just do something different. And then the next day at school, my friends would ask me what I've been up to. And I'd be like, oh, I've been having some secret tests done.
Ah, secret tests. Well, did you ever tell them what was going on?
I'll be honest, I didn't really know what was going on because I didn't know what we was looking for. I just knew that I was having these tests done because my mum wanted me to get them done, and the doctors were saying it's a good thing to figure out what's going on because there is certainly an issue underlying in you. But because I didn't know what was going on, I didn't really speak about it too much to my friends, other than just kind of bragging that I got the day off school.
So they didn't really get a chance to be supportive because there was kind of a lot of...
I think they were jealous. I was getting time off school, you know, I was getting to hang out with my mum for a whole day whilst they were all stuck at school.
Cool. Okay, so afterwards, once you were diagnosed, how did you cope with the idea that you were going to have this illness for the rest of your life?
For me, getting diagnosed was actually, I think, a good thing, because I'd spent 2 years of having different tests, not really knowing what was going on, and finally having a conclusion gave me a new normal that I had to finally figure out a way to live with. But knowing that I had Crohn's meant that I was now able to work out a way to move forward with it, and hopefully the testing would calm down. Yeah,
it was like it was an answer to all of this uncertainty. It was closure in some ways, although in other ways it was the beginning as well.
Yeah, but it was, you know, I think it was a really positive thing to finally know what was going on in my body.
Yeah. Okay, so in the early years, how was your disease managed? Was that a straightforward affair for some time?
For the first few years, it was a lot of trial and error. I was learning about Crohn's myself. It wasn't like that highly known about back then. Like now, there's a lot more information out there, and with charities like Crohn's and Colitis UK, you know, there's people out there actively working to better the lives of people going through this situation. But back then, there wasn't much, and it wasn't like the internet was around, so I couldn't really do the research that I can do nowadays. So it was just trial and error, trying different foods, listening to what the doctors told me to try out, trying different medications. And slowly over time, you know, I got used to managing it. Like obviously a flare-up can happen at any moment. So, you know, you can't take it for granted when you're going through a good time. The first few years, it is trial and error because every single person has it in a slightly different way. So what might work for me might not necessarily work for someone else who's got it.
Yeah, sure. So were you managed solely in Bradford, at the hospital in Bradford, or were you cross-site, going across to Leeds or other hospitals at that time?
It was just Bradford Royal Infirmary for me, and obviously my local GP practice in Wyke.
Okay. So was that within a paediatric team, or?
I definitely don't think I had a team.
Okay.
It wasn't that advanced. It was just me and my mum and whichever doctor was kind of given to us at the time. Like I say, we didn't really know what Crohn's was. Even when I was diagnosed with it, it was a whole new thing. And because of that, it meant that I didn't necessarily, you know, there wasn't no infrastructure for me.
Yeah, sure. But if you were in hospital, I don't know if you stayed in overnight, were you on a kids ward, or was it like an adolescent unit, or?
I think the first time I was admitted to hospital was an adolescent kind of unit, but then by the time I had my first major operation when I was 17, that was more of an adult ward. I remember there was a couple of old guys lying in beds next to me, but I don't think they had Crohn's disease. I think they were suffering from different things.
Yeah. But that's quite a difficult situation as well for a teenager, isn't it? To suddenly be thrust into this very grown-up world of sick people.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, I think the young naivety in me didn't know that this wasn't normal. There was no blueprint to my life. You know, I didn't come from traditional backgrounds. It was very unorthodox kind of way of growing up that I went through. So this was just life for me, and that's, I think, what helped me get through it and just deal with it in the moment and just take everything in my stride.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so the early treatments that you had, did they affect you? What kind of side effects did you have?
Early on, trying different things, I remember like I used to take this medication called mesalazine, Pentasa. It's like an anti-inflammatory, and I think it possibly did help me, but it made me feel really sick all the time. And I was on a lot of different medications that they made me feel better on my insides potentially, but they gave me headaches, they gave me migraines. At times I had a big rash all over my face, which is not the sort of thing you want when you're a young person, you know, going through adolescence and, you know, trying to impress the ladies. So, you know, it definitely was a tricky and a lot to deal with, I guess, at that young age. But in the same respects, like I say, it was normal for me, and it just was the reality I was living in. So I've always been a believer that you can't dwell on the negatives. You just got to focus on the positives, and hopefully that'll get you through.
Yeah, sure. But as an adolescent, like you just said, you know, there's a lot of other things going on at the same time. I mean, were you able to do the things that adolescents could do? You know, did you go through the usual rituals of teenage life?
I definitely found things I wanted to do, like play football, like every young lad probably wants to do at some point, or join the rugby team. They weren't the easiest things for me. I actually did join the rugby team, and it didn't quite go down too well. I went down a lot and got battered and bruised, and just realised that, you know, I didn't have the stamina or the strength that everybody else had. I mean, looking at me now and thinking back, rugby probably wasn't the best sport for me to try and attempt to do because I wasn't really built for it. But even general stuff that we do in PE lessons were difficult for me because the fatigue on my body and just the energy sap that I would have regularly because of Crohn's made it really difficult for me to just enjoy doing these things. And luckily I found a hobby in magic, which doesn't require as much physical dexterity as some of these more active sports. So that was, you know, my main focus that kind of got me through everything. But I definitely did miss out on playing sports and kind of doing some of the things that a lot of my friends were doing.
Yeah, and were your teachers kind of well informed or supportive, or they just let you get on with it?
Like I said, for the first few years when I was just going through tests, I think the teachers possibly got a bit frustrated that I was always missing lessons because I was going to the hospital.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really give them answers to what I was doing or why, you know, whether there was going to be an end to it, to the point where I think that they just kind of misunderstood me and thought I was just trying to get out of doing work.
Yeah.
But then once I was diagnosed, it was actually quite, you know, when I was diagnosed, I was getting ready to leave school. I was just finishing my GCSEs and I was going to go off to college. And when I went to college, then the teachers were a bit more open-minded. It was an art college as well, so the students were a lot more open-minded, and they were just basically, on the first day, I just kind of told everybody, hey, I'm Stephen, I've got Crohn's disease, so I need to go to the toilet quite a lot, but I also like to do magic, so when I'm around, I can amaze you with some cool stuff. And I was just kind of embraced by my college community from then on, and it just made everything so much easier.
Yeah, sure. Excuse me. So I know that through the years you've had a number of connected healthcare issues. I'm thinking particularly of your food poisoning episode a couple of years ago. Can you tell me, well, just give me a summary of those things that happened along the way?
So obviously, since being diagnosed at 15, I had a lot to learn, and it was a big time of discovery, which I'm still discovering to this day. And as I mentioned earlier, when you have Crohn's, you can go through phases where you have like an easy ride for a little bit, but then a flare-up can come and grab you at any moment. And that's kind of what happened like 3 years ago. I was flying high. I'd just done an arena tour doing magic at like the O2 Arena and places like that. And I really felt that I was on top of the world and invincible. And then I got the food poisoning, Campylobacter, which combined with my Crohn's was a bad recipe, and it just kind of took me out of action. It was the worst pain I'd ever felt. It felt worse than any flare-up I'd ever gone through, and it put me out of action for like a good 2 years. And I think it, in some ways, it was maybe my body's way of telling me, you know, you've got to, you know, make sure you're keeping on top of things all the time and don't take this for granted. And it meant that I just had to take a couple of years to slow down and just, you know, let myself get right and let my body get right. And luckily, you know, I've been able to kind of work my way back to a decent amount of full health. I wouldn't say I'm 100%, but I'm definitely 85%, and I'm getting stronger every single day. I remember thinking back, actually, it's crazy, like a year ago, I couldn't even hold cards like this anymore.
Wow.
And for a magician, this is something, you know, like just shuffling cards and stuff like that is kind of something that I've done since I was, you know, 12 years old. So to not be able to do that was kind of really scary. But, you know, luckily working with rehabilitation people, working with the team that I've got around me now, and just general focus on finding something like magic to distract myself and give me something to challenge myself to get back to being able to do this stuff, was what really got me through. And now I'm lucky that I'm able to perform magic again. And in fact, let's see, well, I've got cards in hand. Should we try something with you?
Please. Yes.
Yeah. So you can see all the cards are different. Now, I'm going to juggle cards like this. If I was to get you to say stop, I can see this card because obviously it's on the screen, but I can't see the next one. So that's the one that we'll have you look at if you say stop. So I'm just going to juggle through. Say stop whenever you like.
Stop.
Right there?
Yeah.
I'm just going to turn my head so I can't see the card, but I'm just going to show it to the camera. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
So you should have a card in mind right now. I didn't see, I was looking away. Hopefully you could see that on screen, that I wasn't looking. And I want you to imagine the name of that card right in front of you. Imagine it's spelled out, each individual letter.
Okay.
I'm just going to adjust myself a little bit so you can see the deck. You can see the cards, right?
Yeah.
Imagine the name spelled out right in front of you, right here.
Yeah.
And in fact, just focus on the edge of the cards.
What? That is ridiculous. How did you do that? That is exactly the card.
So yeah, I'm back, and like I say, it's just so lucky to be performing magic again and to be able to do what I love doing, because that is the thing that I live for. And in spite of my Crohn's, I never wanted to be defined by my illness. My magic is what I want people to talk about.
Of course, but you have got a great platform to be able to discuss the illness and how it affects people, and it's fabulous that you're willing to do that. So when you had that crisis a couple of years, 3 years ago, obviously there was an emotional effect to that. You were scared, you said that yourself. How did you kind of overcome that?
When I first got told that I couldn't potentially perform magic again because I developed arthritis in all my joints, I did feel like things were over for me career-wise, because I'm so used to using my hands and being dexterous, and this has been the thing that's kind of got me through all of my tough times. And now being told that that might be an impossibility for me, it was really frightening. But once I got past the wallowing in the depression side of it, you know, luckily I've got good friends around me who always try and pick me up, and you know, my family and my friends were like saying, you know, don't, you know, this doesn't have to be the end of it, and you know, don't have that attitude. And you know, and I started to think, all right, maybe I can't physically perform magic again, but I've still got my mind, I've still, you know, got all these ideas, and maybe it's a new challenge. You know, I've spent a life going through different challenges and battling obstacles and coming up with new ways to do things in spite of the illness. So maybe now I can reevaluate my approach to magic and find a new way to do it. And that became my new mission, and it gave me something to focus on, and it just gave me a drive, which I think I really needed to just boost myself. And then also just like the support from my family and friends has just been, you know, priceless. And I'm just really thankful to kind of have these people around me at that dark time, because they really helped me get through it. Yeah,
sure. And there must have been lots and lots of people throughout your journey that were particularly important, but at different times, if you know what I mean. You know, a new diagnosis, probably your family were there for you, the most important, and then friends and colleagues, like you say. Is there anybody in particular that has been with you throughout the whole thing?
I mean, I guess obviously my wife, she's been around, especially in the last 3 years. You know, when I was going through what I've just been through, she was pivotal in, you know, helping me get through that. We've been married 8 years now. So, but before that, I guess probably the person who was around more than anybody else was Dan Albion, who's one of my best friends and my business partner, my manager. He's been there for a lot of it. He's been in hospital with me many a times, all around the world, like in hospital in Mexico, in hospital, you know, in India. We've had some crazy experiences. In fact, when I was actually filming my TV series, we flew out to Mexico to film, and I remember landing, and basically on the plane I'd gotten really sick and I couldn't get up. I physically couldn't lift myself out of the chair, and I'd been sick a few times in the bathroom, but I'd just kind of woken up. We were getting ready, everyone's getting ready to get off the plane, and then I remember kind of blacking out, and they had to get paramedics onto the plane to get me into the airport. And then I was in the like hospital part of the airport, which wasn't really a hospital. It was like a tiny little room in a Mexican airport with people who don't speak English, and I didn't speak the best Mexican in regards to trying to describe the medications that I needed. And they're trying to give me medicine which first and foremost probably wasn't right for me because of my Crohn's. And it was crazy. And yeah, I mean, you know, that happens obviously more often than it should do, but that is just one of the things that comes with living with Crohn's. And you know, traveling's always been difficult, but I'm so lucky that I do kind of get to travel to amazing places, but it does obviously take its toll.
Yeah, sure. We're going to come to travel in a bit, because I think it's really important to discuss that, and will be massively helpful to a lot of other people, I'm sure. So was there anything, I'm not thinking necessarily about the early days, but throughout health crises, is there anything that really empowered you or that really helped you with your confidence to manage your illness?
I mean, I would say magic was the thing that really helped me. And I mean, just having a passion that I loved so much that would give me something to distract myself from the discomfort that I was feeling in my body. And I think it's important for anybody with an illness like this, a chronic illness, to have things that you love to try and distract you, because a lot of it is mental. You know, you get the physical things and you feel that, but there is definitely a mental game that you have to try and battle with it. And I've struggled with it over the years, but magic has always been the one constant in my life. Whenever I'm feeling down, I just can mess with a pack of cards, or I can read a magic book, or I can watch magic on TV. You know, I don't always have to physically perform it, but it's just something that you love often is the best medicine.
Yeah, so you can really immerse yourself in it.
Yeah, when I'm performing, I do find that it takes my mind off the pain, and I don't feel the pain. I feel actually more alive than I ever have done. And I, you know, like I say, that's magic is my passion, but it doesn't have to be magic. It could be any, you know, it could be reading for somebody. It could be, you know, it could be anything. Do you know what I mean? So I just think having a passion and something to focus on to distract you is essential if you want to get through it.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued by that, because I play the mandolin, and
Wow.
But if you put me on a stage with a mandolin in my hand, I'm so anxious. I don't get that kind of out of body feeling of feeling so healthy and amazing.
But if you just play the mandolin for yourself, does it help to calm you?
Oh yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah,
because that's the thing. I don't think you have to have a passion or have a desire to kind of perform for the public, but I think it's just finding something that distracts you and mentally and just gives you some calming influence on your body. Yeah. And that for me has always been magic, but playing the mandolin sounds perfect.
Yeah, brilliant. So in terms of emotional impact, I know you've just touched on that, but do you think that the emotional impact of living with this condition is recognised, and that there's a service for people, you know, from a young age right the way through to support them emotionally?
When I was first diagnosed, I think there was a lack of information about Crohn's. It was kind of a new thing and not many people really talked about it, whereas nowadays I think there's definitely a much more widely known illness and there's a lot more people have it. And I think with things like this, you know, more and more people are finding out about it and being informed, which, you know, is only going to help the community realise that we are not dealing with this on our own. And I think that's massively important. You know, when you're young and you're going through this and you get told you've got this disease, you don't want to necessarily tell your friends about it. It's not the sort of thing you can talk around the dinner table, because more often than not, it's talking about your toilet habits and, you know, tummy issues. So that's not exactly good dinner time chat. So I think, you know, we're lucky in some respects that we live in a modern day and age where you have things like the internet and you can Google what is Crohn's disease, or how can I deal with Crohn's in a different way, or, you know, who can I speak to about it? And then you can find charities like Crohn's and Colitis UK who are set up to help people like us. So I think, yes, it's taken many years to bring it to the forefront of people's attention, but day by day, more and more people are finding out about it, and there's more and more people there willing to help.
Yeah, sure. So there's loads more information available for sure. But I'm thinking about like psychologists or counselling. Was that available, or do you think it's available enough now?
I don't think it was available for me, or at least I never got offered it and I didn't really know how to go about it. But that could partly be to make mine and my mum's naivety in regards to the situation of what we were living with and going through. I think in some ways, once I got the diagnosis and once my mum found out, it was almost like an answer to her question, but then we didn't really know what to do in regards to the aftercare. Then it was just like the beginning of discovering now how to deal with this situation, but we were dealing with it on our own. I didn't really have a team or anything to look after me. It wasn't, I'll be honest, till the last 3 years where I've actually got a proper team now that work with me, and that only came about because of getting the food poisoning. And yeah. I guess because I'm a bit older and I'm in a slightly more fortunate position to be able to do that. And I've got a team of people who know what questions to ask and find the right people to help me. But definitely when I was growing up, I did kind of feel like I was in this on my own.
Yeah, sure. Actually, I was going to ask you about kind of changing, because I know you don't live in Bradford now, do you? So you must have changed healthcare teams, or a consultant at least. Was that
Yeah,
straightforward?
I don't even feel like I had a healthcare team in Bradford. I had my GP, and then when I went to hospital for any operation or any test, I'd see someone different. It wasn't like I had a consistent person working with me or looking after me, but I could kind of slowly track my development of the symptoms with. Like I say, it's only the last few years where I've really had a constant person in Dr. Edward Despot from the Royal Free, who's been just there updating me, and we actually speak, every other day on the phone. And he's always checking on me, and he's been kind of like he's been absolutely amazing. And the team that he has at the NHS, they just really do an amazing job at looking after me, and they answered a lot of questions for me. And I think I'm definitely in a better position with my Crohn's than I was before I got the food poisoning. So
Yeah, sure.
there's, it's definitely some positives to come out of going through that negative experience.
Yeah, so you feel much more like a partner in your own care now.
Yeah, and I understand it a lot more than I did, which I guess really helps, because when you understand what you're going through, then it's easier for you to work out how to deal with the different scenarios that are put in front of you.
Yeah, brilliant. So let's talk a bit more about your magic, because I think it's fabulous that you can stand on stage for a living without being mega stressed like I am.
Oh, don't get me wrong, I get super nervous.
Really?
I never had a desire to go on stage when I was younger. I love performing magic, but I love performing it like up close and personal. Like, it was never the sort of thing that I had visions of me walking out on stage, because that scared me. But because of the success of the last few years, it's given me the confidence, I guess, to go out there and do it. And I know that when I walk out on stage, people want to see me perform. So they're on my side the minute I get out there, which makes it so much easier.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. Honestly, I do. But it was your granddad, wasn't it, that introduced you to magic? Do you want to tell me a bit about that?
Kenneth Walsh, my grandpa, was the most amazing person I ever had in my life. My father was in jail, so I didn't really have a male role model to kind of guide me. But my grandpa, when I'd see him at the weekends, he would just teach me everything from how to tie my shoelaces to how to ride a bike. And he was the one person that just really gave me the support that I think I needed. He didn't actually plan to teach me magic. I never was going to get into it to perform myself, but he could always do these amazing things, and he would always amaze me and my friends when he'd see us with some amazing pieces of magic that he'd learned. And I believe he picked it up when he was in the army. He was in World War II, and he would basically always show us these amazing things. But it wasn't until he saw me getting beaten up at school and thrown around that he actually decided to share some of his magic techniques with me. The boys at school used to throw me into the wheelie bin, and he saw this happen one day, and he taught me a technique so they couldn't lift me anymore. Now, obviously, having Crohn's, I've always been quite skinny, so I was quite easy to throw around. But I tried this technique on the guys the next day, and they couldn't move me. And they were freaked out. They thought I was a crazy demon child, and they stopped picking on me. But it did alienate me a little bit, because people were now afraid of me. So it got me through my school years, but it still wasn't necessarily the sort of thing I ever thought as being something I would perform for entertainment. It wasn't until I finished school and went to college, and I'd kind of been learning more things from my grandpa. But when I was at college, I started to share these things just for fun, and people loved it. And I realised that it was also something that could bring people together. And I'd had quite a lonely life growing up. I didn't have a big family. I didn't have many friends. I lived on an area where you couldn't really go and play out because it was a bit too dangerous. So having magic and having this ability now to bring people to me opened up a whole new world for me and literally changed my life. I ended up dropping out of college to then go on and pursue a career in magic. And that wouldn't have happened without my grandpa showing me magic all those years ago.
Yeah, it's amazing. And also that really the start of all that was being bullied. Again, it's like a negative thing, an adversity that you've overcome. It seems to be a pattern in your life.
Yeah, if I was to kind of go back, I probably wouldn't change any of the negative things that happened in my life, because they have shaped the person that I am today. but obviously they weren't nice things to have to live through. But I'm here now, and I definitely think I'm doing better than my buddies. Sorry, guys.
That must make you feel really good. Okay, so what about your disease when you're on stage? I know you said that the thrill of performing makes you not feel the pain anymore, but is it kind of present in your mind how you're going to have to organise your life and your food so that you can be on stage confidently?
It's present in my life from the second that I wake up in the morning to the moment I go to bed. And more often than not, I get woke up in the middle of the night, needed to rush to the toilet. So it's always there. And I think because of that, I always go out of my way to make sure that my life is set up so that it makes it as easy as possible for me to live with, be it from taking a packed lunch on an airplane with me rather than worrying about whether the plane food's going to be okay, because you don't want to be stuck on an airplane, stuck on the toilet. That's not ideal. So I think planning your days is super important, but then also even to the point where before I go on stage, let's say I'm on stage at 8 o'clock, I won't eat after 5 o'clock, just so I know that I won't need to go to the toilet whilst I'm on stage. I have to like completely empty out my system, and then I'll end up coming off stage at maybe 10 o'clock and probably, you know, eating my dinner then. So I guess it's just kind of knowing my limitations, which I've had to learn over the years how to deal with, but it is a constant in my life, and I'm always thinking about it, even from, you know, going to meet friends at restaurants, which obviously right now we're not able to do that. So you know, Kitchen El Dynamo is the only restaurant I'm going to at the moment. And it's actually been easier whilst I've been staying at home, to be honest, because I'm able just to prepare my own food and make sure that I know exactly what's going into my meals to prepare for my day. So yeah, it's always a struggle, but that's the life of a Crohn's patient. And, you know, I do have this little motto I tell myself, that it's better to be a Crohn's warrior than it is to be a Crohn's worrier.
Right, yeah.
And by telling myself, but you know, I whenever I've got a time where I might be worrying about something, I try and think back, like, why am I worrying about it? And then, you know, is it worth worrying about it? Can I change it? If I can't change it, then there's no point worrying about it, because it's only going to actually exacerbate my Crohn's and make me feel worse than I already do. And it helps me kind of just give me the attitude to just like not focus on the negative and direct my attention on the positives, because a bit like, I guess, a racing car driver, if they're driving really fast and they're driving towards a wall which they potentially might hit, they're told to face away from the wall and look in the direction they're trying to actually get the car to go, because by focusing on that direction, they will more often than not end up getting the car in that direction. And I think if you focus on the pain, then you're probably going to feel the pain more. But if you try to focus on something other than the pain, then you'll probably, hopefully, not feel the pain as much, and you'll be able to direct your focus onto something that will hopefully help you and be more positive.
Yeah, that's a really cool tip. So I'm also thinking about traveling. I know you've mentioned traveling a couple of times already, and really you've got quite a chaotic life, haven't you? You don't live a normal Monday to Friday 9 till 5 existence. You're here, there and everywhere normally in normal times. And also your traveling has taken you to some really quite diverse places. So what's the most kind of, not worrying part of traveling, because obviously you've just said you choose not to worry, but how do you manage the travel and the chaos?
I mean, don't get me wrong, there is times where I'm worried. I think over the years I've just learned how to almost step back from that time and try and almost like just count to 10 in my head when I'm stressed or when I'm feeling discomfort. Take a deep breath and then try and just look at the situation in front of me from a more logical perspective, which, yeah, I know it's difficult and it's easier to say that than it is to do it. But yeah, the whole, like, over the years, it has just been trial and error. And what works for me might not necessarily work for other people in this condition, but it is just about finding what makes you comfortable and what makes you as chilled as possible, because I think stress is the biggest problem that causes the most discomfort, especially in me. So I always just try and make my life as stress-free as possible. Now, I know that if you look at my lifestyle, yes, it is crazy and chaotic, but it's so much fun, and it's often the fun side of it that takes my mind off the bad things. And you have to weigh up the options, you know, like, yeah, you might have to, you know, plan your meals ahead of time in order to go and do this fun activity, but the fun activity should be worth it. And, you know, giving yourself things to look forward to really helps to, you know, give you a good motivation to get through this and to not let the negative things hold you back.
Yeah. So I know you said about packing your lunch for going travelling and for being on the aeroplane. Is there anything else that you organise so that a journey can be easier, or maybe a transfer once you've got to the airport at the other end? Or
First thing I always do is find out where all the toilets are. To the point where now I'll get somewhere and my manager Dan is always like, right, you've got a toilet over there, you've got a toilet at the back of the room, there's a toilet there, and we spoke to the lady at the front and she says if you really need to go, you can use the pilot's toilet, you know. So I think, yeah, knowing where the toilets are is super important, and also maybe packing toilet roll with you, because, you know, the worst thing is to get to a public toilet and then not be able to, you know, clean yourself. So I think, you know, just when you've got Crohn's, you know that eating things could affect you, stress can affect you, and you're probably going to have to go to the toilet more often than the average person. So if you know that those are the three things that might affect you, then try and, you know, sort out your food, try and manage the stress, and make sure you've got some toilet roll and know where the toilets are. And then obviously other things are going to happen and transpire to affect you, because life's not easy, and, you know, anything that can go wrong will go wrong. I've definitely found that out over the years, but you just got to kind of roll with it. You can't let the illness hold you back and define you and stop you from having a positive, happy life. And I'm a big believer that, you know, none of us should have to go through discomfort and not be happy at some point. So yeah, it's just kind of, I guess, like I say, we're lucky now that we have things like the internet and Crohn's and Colitis UK and things such as this to discuss the symptoms in more detail and discuss what people have to go through, which will hopefully help inform other people and kind of fast track some of the trial and error that people have to go through, because you've got people with experience giving them advice that they can maybe implement without having to go through all them tough trial sessions.
yeah, that's kind of my point, really. I was thinking about hints and tips, and you've just given some really great ones just like that, just off the cuff. And, you know, other people would have had to have discovered that by themselves. So I agree completely that these kinds of discussions allow dissemination of other people's experience and what worked for them. And you're right, it might not work for everybody, but it's absolutely great as a starting point, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I was listening to a podcast last night, and it was you talking about nutrition and food. And I have to say, I was really, really touched when you said without your Crohn's, you would be a foodie. You love food. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
I mean, this is going to sound really bad because you bigged me up as being a foodie, right? But literally the one taste that I miss from my childhood, right, is baked beans. And I know that's not, like, when you talk about food, it's the taste. Like, I haven't had baked beans since I was about 8 years old, obviously because it gave me discomfort, and then once I found out I had Crohn's, I can't eat anything like that anymore. No roughage in my diet, but there's so much taste that I feel like I'm missing out on. You know, I occasionally, you know, I'm not necessarily supposed to do this, but, you know, if my wife has something, like, you know, if she's got something that looks like it's really tasty, you know, I might have like dip my finger and have a little taste of it just to get that taste, because with my Crohn's, my diet is so bland. All of the cool things that would give you an explosion of a party in your mouth when you're eating it, I'm not allowed to have it. Like, my diet is so boring. Yes, it obviously keeps me healthy and stops me from getting, you know, discomfort, but I just feel like I miss out on all these amazing tastes. And, you know, everyone raves on how amazing the spices taste. I don't get to do that. And, you know, me being in the position where I get to travel around to all these amazing places, you know, from filming in India to being in Mexico to being in Japan, there's so many incredible food options that I don't get to partake in. I go to these restaurants with my friends and I'm just sat there and I've got like, yeah, so can you make me something that's not on the menu? But it's like totally bland and basically not going to make me sick. As much as I'm just jealous of all my friends eating these amazing food, I can't have it. So yeah, I mean, I know I started off obviously talking about missing beans on toast when I was a kid. It's the one thing I miss from my childhood. But I guess the reason I miss it is because I had it in the first place. Whereas a lot of these other foods I've never tasted. I haven't tasted like a proper curry. I haven't tasted like, you know, like some real spicy Mexican food because I just won't risk it right now. But there is like that thing that I do think, oh, you know, maybe I could have a little taste. But then my conscience comes into play and says, Stephen, just order the boring food and have a happy life.
Yeah. But being a foodie myself, that really struck a chord for me. And the other thing that really made me smile was the story about your nana's corned beef hash.
Oh, it's the best. Like, I mean, my nana's corned beef hash, and I have to just point out, it's not just corned beef hash. It's her special recipe because she makes it without the usual stuff that you would have eaten. Obviously, in some corned beef hash, you have baked beans. You know, she makes it now for me a very Crohn's friendly way, but she puts it all into a massive Yorkshire pudding, and it is the best meal ever. It's my favourite meal. Whenever I go back to see my nana, you know, that's the meal that she's got prepared for me, and yeah, it's amazing. And I don't even know what the recipe is. I think she'll probably take it to the grave with her, but maybe I need to try and get it out of her, you know, before it's too late, so that we can, you know, we can open the Nellie's kitchen in the future, because my nana Nellie, she makes the best food ever, and her corned beef hash is only one of many incredible recipes. Excellent.
And how brilliant that she makes a Crohn's friendly version, and you can be confident that you can eat that and not be poorly. It's just great, isn't it?
Yeah. She's been amazing for all this, my nana.
So just to tip back a little bit into the magic world, I'm sure you won't be able to tell me exactly what you've got planned for the future, but what are your career goals for the coming years? Is there anything you can tell me about that?
So my highlight of my career so far was probably headlining the O2 Arena in London, doing magic for 12,000 people all at the same time. It was just something I never imagined as a child. Like I said, I was always scared of going on stage, but being able to do that, it was the most incredible experience I'd ever had. Now, obviously, with the current state of the world, I don't know when live touring or when live events and things like that are going to ever happen again. But since I did the O2, I've wanted to create a new show and kind of, you know, try and make an even bigger and better show than my last one. And that is definitely something I want to do in the future. I want to try and take magic to every country in the world and just really share magic and connect with people in a way that, you know, people don't think is possible. So that's definitely high on the agenda for me. Obviously right now, I think, you know, I'm just kind of just trying to use this time whilst I'm at home to think of new magic ideas and just to focus on keeping myself mentally strong. And, you know, just, I have obviously trying to create ideas for when that comes to light, but who knows when it will happen. But hopefully in the future, I'll be on the stage and you'll be able to come and watch me.
Yes, please. What country in the world is like the biggest surprise to you in terms of their response to your magic?
Ooh, the biggest surprise, probably India.
Yeah?
Yeah, like the fans out there are absolutely incredible. Like they amazing. I remember when I went there, I went there after my TV show had kind of been out there, and I'd never been before, and I didn't really understand how popular I was. I remember getting off the plane, and I felt like Justin Bieber level famous. Like it was insane. Like don't get me wrong, like I'm well known around the world, but like when I walked through India, like it is a whole different level. I can kind of appreciate what it must be like for, you know, your David Beckhams and your like the superstars of the world, what they have to go through. And it was just incredible. And even on social media, you know, the Indian fans are just like, they are super supportive, and I'm just super thankful to have that. And it was very surprising because, you know, to go to a place I've never been to and have everybody know who I am was just incredible.
How cool is that? And so I was thinking as well about relationships, not just relationships, but relationships with your fans and how they respond to you when you talk about your illness.
Yeah, the support from my fans has definitely been a driving force in helping me deal with things. It showed me that I wasn't alone in this. And I think that is a big, important issue for many people going through this. We feel it in our bodies, and we feel like we might not be able to talk about it with certain people. So we can feel very isolated and very lonely. And I think once I started to share what I was going through with people on my social media, which initially I was sharing not because I wanted to share it, it was more because the paparazzi had got pictures of me and looking not like my usual self. So I told people what was going on just because I wanted them to know the real story. But then the outpouring of support I got, and also one thing that really touched me was when other people who had moon face and who had the similar symptoms started to share their pictures, which they were saying that they would never have shared them had I not shared them. They related to what I was going through, and it just made me feel that there's a community of people there to support us, and we're in this together, and together we can probably get through it in a much easier way.
Yeah, sure. That's really powerful as well, that probably it was the first time that they'd shared, and
Yeah.
I think that's great. Yeah. So what about romantic relationships? I mean, we said about when you were an adolescent and you were concerned about going out on the pull, but was your Crohn's something that you were worried about discussing with like potential partners or potential girlfriends, for instance?
Crohn's definitely messed up my whole dating life massively. Because when you think about it, a date usually consists of going to a nice restaurant and getting to know somebody over some food and drink. You're already nervous about the date, right? And then you have to order food from a menu, which probably, being the gentleman, obviously ask the lady where they want to go to, but then they probably go to a place that is not very Crohn's friendly. But at that point, I don't want to say, I don't want to go there because I've got Crohn's and blah, blah, blah. So you go anyway, and then you spend half an hour on the menu trying to find something that you can maybe eat. Then when you do eat it, more often than not, you end up in the toilet for 45 minutes and you come back and the date's left. So, I'm lucky if it ever gets to dessert, and I'm still talking about the food here. So, it's kind of like, it's dating life is just a shambles. Now, thankfully, I married the most amazing woman, and, she was still there waiting for me when I finished on the toilet. And, she's always been super supportive, and she gets it. And she's like, when you got to go, you got to go. And, she's been a dream come true. And, I think, it does show that, no matter what you're going through, things will work out, and things worked out perfectly for me in the end. But the dating life was tricky. But I think, definitely nowadays, people know a lot more about Crohn's, and it is a lot more, it's talked about more. So I don't think it should be something anyone should ever feel ashamed of. I guess in my head, when I was younger, going on these dates, I should have probably just felt, I should maybe just be more upfront and honest, because there's nothing wrong with being honest and telling somebody that you have an illness, and it's nothing you should be ashamed of. And maybe if I took that attitude myself, it might have helped me in my dating life. But I can't complain because, I married a winner. So, I've done all right. But I think if young people out there, if they are, approaching this time in their life where they're going to be, exploring the birds and the bees and meeting, young people in a romantic level, then maybe just, be honest from the beginning and don't feel embarrassed by it. And if that person does have an adverse reaction to it, well, then they're not the right person for you, and just move on. Do you know what I mean? It's a good way of kind of finding the people that you want in your life versus the people that you don't, and the ones that you want are the people who are going to support you.
Yeah. So when you met your wife and you had those discussions about your condition, how did it go? What did you do? What did you say?
It was when I was on the first date, to be honest, I did have to go to the toilet for a good 45 minutes. And I came back and she was still there, bless her. She was on her phone, she'd been talking to her friends, and she did think that I'd maybe done a runner. And then I goes, listen, I have a problem with my tummy. I've never been to this restaurant before, and you know, this was obviously something I maybe should have told you beforehand. And she goes, "Oh, don't be silly." And it became not a thing. I think I'd built it up in my head like it was going to be such a big deal, but often I find when you share these things, it actually just releases so much tension from you, and they're not as big problems as you might make out they are in your own head.
Yeah. Okay, so let's have a think about a time when, like, you're having a crisis, a flare, and you're feeling really ghastly. What's the best thing that somebody can do for you when you're finding things difficult?
I think for me, if I'm finding things difficult, I like to just have a few moments on my own, just to kind of catch myself, you know, to maybe I might need to go to the bathroom for a while, or I might just need to kind of lie down and kind of go into almost like the fetal position, because I find that when I do that, it kind of calms my tummy down a little bit. And it's definitely, you know, something that I've found, you know, like keeling over like this, supporting the tummy does help me. But that only helps, you know, when I've got stomach cramps and discomfort. And I know that it can look a bit weird if I start doing that in the middle of a meeting, or you know, we're at a restaurant and I'm starting to keel over. But my friends around me have they know what I kind of do, you know, to kind of deal with the situation. And I think in some ways for me, I don't necessarily want people to pander to me or to change how they are, because it's not their problem, it's my problem, and I don't want to necessarily burden other people with what I'm going through. So I think I always just try and deal with it myself. And I think, but I think it's important that if you are feeling discomfort, just excuse yourself and just, you know, say to people, I'm feeling a little bit rough. I'm just going to go and chill out for half an hour and just try and get myself a bit better. Just so at least they know that you're going through something. And if you want help, then say, listen, I'm feeling really bad. Would you mind driving me home? Or would you mind finding if there's a toilet nearby? You know, then people will help you. I think you shouldn't be embarrassed to ask for help. But at the same time, I think I've always been the sort of person, I don't want to burden other people with my problems.
Yeah, so you don't want to fuss. You want to be supportive,
No,
but you
no.
don't want to fuss. Yeah. Okay, so what do you do just for you? What are your hobbies?
I love reading and getting lost in a good book or watching movies. And I mean, one of my hobbies, which is kind of crazy, is I like driving, but like drifting and stuff like that, you know, doing track days. But that's, you know, I only do that once in a blue moon, you know, just to treat myself. But reading, getting lost in a good book, and just kind of getting lost in my imagination, it's the things I love to do. And the good thing about these hobbies is that if you spend a lot of time on the toilet, as we do with Crohn's, then you have a lot of time to read books. So I have a big pile of books next to my toilet, and I just, you know, it helps to pass the time and use that time productively, because it could be reading books about, you know, like reading the Chronicles of Narnia and getting lost in a magical, mystical world, or it could be reading books about Crohn's and better ways to deal with it, or books about magic and how to improve it. So that way, at least that time on the toilet in discomfort is not gone in vain. I'm using it productively.
Yeah, that's really, really good hint. So we're coming to a close now, Dynamo, and I've got to say I'm really, really grateful. I'm massively grateful for the insight into your world and how it is to live with Crohn's, and also how you make it work. I would like to thank Crohn's and Colitis UK for hosting this very important conversation on World IBD Day, and a day for the Crohn's and Colitis community to come together and to share their stories and to raise awareness. But before we finish, I'd like to ask you 2 more questions, if that's all right.
Yeah.
If you go back and give some advice to the little boy from Bradford who was being bullied at school, what would it be?
If I could go back and tell myself something, knowing what I know now about Crohn's, it would be first and foremost to try and seek out more information about the symptoms and about what I was going through. Because I think, like I said, when I was younger, I was quite naive to it all, and I did whatever the doctors told me to do, but I didn't necessarily understand why I was doing it, and I didn't really learn about my Crohn's for myself. Whereas nowadays we do have the internet, and we have, you know, so much resources available to us. And, you know, I know that it might not necessarily be the most comfortable thing to talk about to people, but it is important to talk about it. And I would have probably told myself to discuss it with my friends. And now, if you don't feel comfortable talking to your friends about it to begin with, well, you can contact Crohn's and Colitis UK. You can contact different charities. There's many places you can go to speak to it with like-minded people who won't make you feel as embarrassed about it, because you shouldn't be embarrassed about it. But I think talking about it more is something I would have done when I was younger, had I known what I know now, and not hiding away the symptoms of it from all my friends, just embracing it and letting people know. So that way there's no surprises for them and everybody's on the same page and they can help me deal with it together.
Yeah. So have you linked in with support groups and IBD charities kind of in adult life?
Over the last few years, definitely. And I constantly, you know, like I say, I'm reading books about it and just trying to study for myself on how to deal with it, because it's one thing learning through trial and error, but it's another thing actually reading like genuine like information that is given to you by a doctor, or you find out, you know, from a charity that his sole purpose is to help people with IBD symptoms. So I think, you know, the last few years has been a massive learning experience for me, and it's definitely helped me a lot having charities like Crohn's and Colitis UK out there to give people like myself the support that we need.
Yeah, okay. And one last question. If you were shipwrecked on a desert island alone, just for a couple of weeks, let's say, what 3 things would you be most happy to find in your pocket?
First, I have to say toilet roll. Got to have toilet roll. Second, I think a notepad and pen so I can write down ideas or keep a journal and just occupy my mind by doing something positive in that time. And then also, I think I'd probably have a really big book, something like the Chronicles of Narnia, that is really meaty, so that it's going to take me a long time to finish, so that I can constantly keep my imagination flowing, and yeah, it keep me busy. So toilet paper, a good book, and a notepad and pen so I can write down new magic ideas or keep myself busy.
That's absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for giving your time to us today. I've really enjoyed our conversation and I'd absolutely love it if we could keep in touch. Thanks ever so much.
Definitely. In fact, before we go, I want to maybe try something, because we've all been locked down now for 6 or 7 weeks. I know things have eased up a little bit, but during this time I was reminiscing about the things that I love doing and probably took for granted before we were all forced to stay at home. Sue, is there any moment in time you can think about before lockdown that you maybe took for granted?
Yeah.
Would you mind sharing what that is?
Yes, on a Saturday morning, every other Saturday morning, we have a rehearsal for an orchestra that I play with, and I really miss orchestra rehearsal. Oh,
that's perfect, and that I could see why you missed that as well, man. That's going to be perfect though. I'm going to set a time on my watch. So this is going to be a bit strange, but I want you to close your eyes for me. I want you to imagine you're back playing with this orchestra, think back to that time, and try and make the images really sharp and clear in your mind. See what you would see, hear what you would hear. And now I want you to imagine looking down at your wrist, at your watch in that moment. Focus on the exact time that you would see. And don't say it out loud, but once you can see a time in your imagination, just nod your head for me. Perfect. Open your eyes. Can you name that time out loud?
It's 20 past 11.
20 past 11. And there's no way that I could have known that, right?
No way.
I set a time on my watch.
How on earth? That's mad.
And thank you so much for your time today and for having me. And big shout outs to all of the Crohn's warriors out there on Dynamo. And yeah, stay strong, stay safe, and don't be a Crohn's warrior, be a Crohn's warrior.
Fabulous. Bye-bye. I'd like to say thank you to Crohn's and Colitis UK for hosting this really important day, which brings together the Crohn's and Colitis community to share stories and raise awareness. Thank you.